Vogrin, the monstrous arena master, adjusted his numerous ocular implants, ensuring he had the perfect view of the carnage to be. His 6 eyes gleamed with avarice. The Crimson Colosseum was his personal kingdom, and the screams of the dying were his favorite symphony. Today's spectacle, the debut of the human, was projected to break all viewership records. The initial betting odds were astronomical, with the human being given a less than 1 in a million chance of survival against anything, let alone a seasoned arena combatant. He had even scheduled a special post-bout interview with Zaktar, the Rexilian commander, to highlight the ease of the capture and further emphasize the human's perceived weakness. It would be a masterclass in humiliation, perfect for the voracious galactic media. Back in the grim, reinforced holding cells beneath the arena, Maya Torres slowly, painfully, became aware of her surroundings. Her head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache, and her body felt like a lead weight. The last thing she remembered was bending over a geological sample, the familiar scent of iron ore in the air, then a sudden, dizzying burst of light and a high-pitched hum. Now, she lay on a cold, metallic floor, a strange, guttural language echoing through the thick walls. When she finally managed to open her eyes, the first thing she saw was the distorted, multifaceted face of a Rexilian guard peering at her through a reinforced viewport. Its mandibles clicked, and it emitted a series of what sounded like mocking chitters. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't some elaborate prank. The alien faces, the strange technology, the oppressive hum of the complex, it was all terrifyingly real. Her training, however, kicked in almost immediately. Years of competitive mixed martial arts had hammered discipline and control into her very core. She might be terrified, but she wouldn't let it show. Not yet. Her first instinct was to assess her situation. Her jumpsuit, though rumpled, was intact. She checked her limbs, nothing seemed broken. Her internal chronometer, a mental habit from her surveying work, told her she had been unconscious for a significant period. She tried to stand, her muscles protesting, but she pushed through the weakness. The cell was small, metallic, and devoid of any furnishings save for a single, low-gravity sanitation unit. The air was sterile, with a faint, metallic tang. She ran her hands over the smooth, unbroken walls, searching for any seam, any weakness, anything that might offer an escape. There was nothing. It was a perfectly sealed box. A harsh clang echoed through the cell block, and Maya instinctively tensed. A heavy door at the far end of the corridor slid open with a hiss, revealing Zaktar, his massive form filling the doorway, flanked by 2 other Rexilian warriors. He strode into her cell, his powerful claws clicking rhythmically on the floor. His 6 eyes, cold and calculating, swept over her, dissecting her with an unnerving intensity. He said something in his guttural language, a low rumble that sounded like a challenge, or perhaps, a threat. Maya, despite the pounding of her heart, met his gaze. She understood none of his words, but the tone was unmistakable. Contempt. Disdain. He saw her as something utterly insignificant. This was a mistake. A massive, galactic-scale mistake on their part. She had spent years mastering the art of leverage, of exploiting an opponent's overconfidence, of turning their own strength against them. They thought she was a meat bag with delusions of intelligence? Fine. Let them think that. It would only make the coming surprise all the more satisfying. Zaktar gestured to one of his subordinates, who produced a small, clear data pad. It displayed images of Maya's home world, her city, her family. The message was clear: cooperate, or there would be consequences beyond her own personal fate. Maya's jaw tightened, a cold resolve hardening her expression. They thought they could break her with threats? They had no idea who they were dealing with. She had faced down far more intimidating opponents in the ring, opponents who outweighed her by dozens of pounds and who genuinely wanted to hurt her. These aliens, for all their size and weaponry, were still operating on flawed assumptions. A new group of Rexilian guards entered her cell, carrying what looked like archaic, heavy manacles. Zaktar watched, a predatory gleam in his eyes, as they roughly secured her wrists and ankles. The chains were thick, made of some heavy, dull metal, and they weighed her down. He then produced a single, small energy capsule, no bigger than her thumb. He held it up for her to see, then gestured to her neck. She understood. A shock collar. A remote control. Just in case she got any ideas. He let out another guttural chittering sound, a sound of absolute, unshakable confidence. He turned and strode out of the cell, his hunting party following, leaving Maya alone, shackled and seemingly helpless. But as the door hissed shut, a small, almost imperceptible smirk touched Maya's lips. They had her body, yes, but they hadn't touched her mind. And they had given her a critical piece of information: they wanted her relatively undamaged for the arena trials. This wasn't an execution. This was a show. And Maya Torres knew how to put on a show. The adrenaline, which had been a dull buzz, now surged through her veins, sharpening her senses, clearing the last vestiges of the sedative fog. She began to subtly test the chains, feeling their weight, assessing their flexibility, noting the subtle give of the metal. She wasn't looking for escape, not yet. She was gathering data. Every bit of information, no matter how small, could be crucial. She was an engineer, a problem solver. And these aliens, for all their advanced tech, had just presented her with the biggest, most dangerous engineering problem of her life. The massive doors of the gladiators' entrance rumbled open, revealing the blinding, searing light of the Crimson Colosseum. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, a tidal wave of alien noise that slammed into Maya. She squinted, her eyes adjusting to the intensity. The arena floor stretched out before her, a vast expanse of dark, polished obsidian, marked with strange, ceremonial glyphs. The air hummed with 1,000 different alien scents: ozone, acrid sweat, the faint, metallic tang of blood, and something else, something she couldn't quite identify, but which smelled distinctly like fear. Vogrin's amplified voice boomed across the arena, translated simultaneously into countless alien languages. Welcome, citizens of the galaxy, to the most anticipated event of the cycle. Today, we witness history. We witness the debut of a new species, one previously considered so insignificant, so utterly harmless, that it was barely noted on the galactic census. A wave of laughter, a cacophony of clicks, growls, and whistles, swept through the stands. Behold, he bellowed, his voice dripping with theatrical mockery, the human. A creature so fragile, so utterly devoid of combat prowess, that our brave Rexilian hunters captured it with minimal effort. Observe its pathetic form. Its lack of natural weaponry. Its softness. More laughter, louder this time, rippled through the colossal amphitheater. Maya, still shackled, stood tall, refusing to flinch. Her expression was a carefully constructed mask of apprehension, just enough fear to be convincing, but beneath it, a cold, calculated fury simmered. She scanned the crowd, a sea of grotesque and magnificent alien forms. Four-eyed beings with shimmering scales, towering insectoids with multiple limbs, amorphous blobs pulsating with inner light, they were all there, unified in their shared amusement at her expense. Up in a VIP box, Maya spotted Zaktar, his form unmistakable, surrounded by his hunting pack. He watched her with an almost casual arrogance, a smirk visible even from this distance. It was that smirk that ignited a cold spark within her. You want a show, big guy? I'll give you a show. Vogrin's voice boomed again. And against this specimen, he spat the word as if it tasted foul, we have chosen an opponent whose very presence will demonstrate the vast, unbridgeable chasm between a true warrior race and this delicate little morsel. Unleash. Krag the Bruiser. From an opposing gate, a new sound erupted, a deafening roar that vibrated through the arena floor, followed by the clatter of massive, clawed feet. Krag was a nightmare made flesh. He was a hulking, 8-legged beast from the swamp world of Gorgon, 7, easily 20 feet long and 10 feet tall at the shoulder. His hide was a patchwork of leathery scales and gnarled, bony plates, scarred from 1,000 battles. Tusks, thick as a human's thigh, curved menacingly from his massive jaw, and his eyes, small and beady, glowed with a primal, malevolent hunger. He moved with a lumbering gait, each step shaking the very ground, leaving deep impressions on the obsidian. Chains, thick as Maya's forearm, were attached to his neck, but they seemed more for show than restraint, yanked by unseen forces as he was led out. The crowd roared again, a different kind of sound this time, a hungry, bloodthirsty cheer. This was what they had come for. The absolute annihilation of the weakest by the strongest. Krag snarled, a low, rumbling sound that spoke of ancient, predatory instincts. He sniffed the air, his multiple nostrils flaring, clearly catching Maya's scent. His small eyes fixed on her, and he let out another, even louder roar, a challenge, a promise of pain. Maya stood her ground, forcing herself to maintain the facade of fear. She was an engineer. She observed. She analyzed. Krag was massive, powerful, and undoubtedly fast for his size. But he was also relying purely on brute force, on his intimidating presence. There was no finesse in his movements, no tactical thought in his roar. He was a blunt instrument. And blunt instruments, she knew, could be broken. The chains on her wrists and ankles, meant to further highlight her helplessness, suddenly felt less like a burden and more like an opportunity. They limited her movement, yes, but they also added weight, mass. And they were, she realized, a convenient handhold. Always look for the leverage, her old coach used to say. Always find the weak point. Vogrin's voice cut through the arena once more. And now, for the main event. Let the games begin. With a final, dramatic flourish, the energy field holding Krag back shimmered and vanished. The massive beast immediately surged forward, a living avalanche of muscle and fury, charging directly at Maya. The crowd erupted into a frenzy, anticipating the swift, decisive end. Zaktar leaned forward in his box, a satisfied smile spreading across his mandibles. This was going to be even more amusing than he had anticipated. The human wouldn't last 10 seconds. But Maya wasn't just standing there. She was waiting. Waiting for the precise moment. Waiting for Krag to commit. And then, just as the monstrous beast was almost upon her, its tusks lowered for the kill, she moved.